Proceedings are finished. We move on to the next debate. I will call Wendy Chamberlain to move the motion. I will then call the Minister to respond. I remind other members that they may only make a speech with prior permission from the member in charge of the debate and the Minister. There will not be an opportunity for the member in charge to wind up, as is the convention, of course, for a 30-minute debate. Order, order. Wendy Chamberlain to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Mr Weston. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I beg to move that this House has considered work capability assessment timescales. And I welcome the Minister to his place to discuss this important issue, and I'm very grateful to him and his office for the recent engagement that they have had with mine on this issue. But I'm sure he's gathered from our recent correspondence that the focus of my remarks today will not be about the timescales for first-time applications for work capability assessments, but for those people who have requested a new or reassessment. Now, there are lots of reasons, Mr Weston, why someone might need to have a new assessment. No health condition follows a set path, and whilst we might hope that someone's health might stay stable or indeed improve, that is often not the way that it works out. Now, I will admit that I don't know how many applicants there are waiting for brand new work capability assessments, but I do know that when the Minister wrote to me last month, he told me that there were a backlog of 35,000 reassessments waiting to be seen. So that's a lot of people struggling or unable to work and arguably not getting the support that they need. And in response to recent PQs, I was told that the Department has no breakdown on that backlog. And I do find that quite concerning, and I hope the Minister will take that away. Whilst I'm hoping he will tell me in his remarks all the ways they are trying to fix the backlog, I would put it to him that you can't add capacity if you don't know where to target, and therefore that's why you need a breakdown of that backlog.
Would the Honourable Lady give way?
I'm happy to give way to the Honourable Member for Strangford.
First of all, can I commend the Honourable Lady for bringing this forward, and just to support the Honourable Lady from a personal point of view. In my office I have a lady who looks after nothing else but benefits. She has told me, and this is her quotation, there are major issues regarding reassessment, waiting times for those who are up for review. She says the official internal figures for Northern Ireland show that the mean average wait was around 290 days. That's 58 weeks. And some people are waiting as long as 7 to 8 years. I have to say, in all honesty, they're extremes, but it does underline the very issue the Honourable Lady is saying. Does she agree that the one way to solve this problem is more staff, and they must be hired to deal with the backlog as applicants are feeling stressed and anxious that their financial stability may change?
I'm grateful to the Honourable Member for Strangford for his intervention. I'm going to go on to talk a bit about my own caseworkers' experience, and I think it is right that we recognise that they are the people who are dealing with the brunt. But I think I'm going to outline what some of the challenges are, and therefore what I hope the Minister might be doing or might be telling us he's doing to address those. If I can move on, there are different assessment providers across the UK. Maximus serves my constituency of North East Fife, whereas other assessment contracts sit with Capita, Serco and Ingeus. And I'd be grateful for more staffing near to North East Fife, but the DWP seems to have no knowledge of knowing whether the problems are greater in Scotland or indeed in Skegness. And when I talk about delays, I'm not talking to a service standard being missed by a few weeks or even a few months. As the Honourable Member for Strangford has said, I have cases in my team where wait times have been going on for 18 months or more. I'd like to talk a little bit about the impact of these delays on people on the waiting list, and I hope the Minister and Mr Western you will understand that for the security and wellbeing of my constituents, I'm not going to share individual details. There are common denominators across the cases which can paint the picture, but as most MPs know, the people we support are often vulnerable and have suffered considerably in their lifetimes, and it is important that we safeguard their welfare. But the common denominators are these. Backgrounds of serious abuse, sometimes back to childhood, abuse which is hard to imagine and has had a serious impact on adult mental health and well-being, severe anxiety, depression and PTSD, physical symptoms and pain, sometimes linked to external factors like car accidents and other times linked to past and ongoing trauma. I have at least one case waiting for a diagnosis of ADHD, but in general, extreme vulnerability across the board. Now, summer 2024 seems like a long time ago. There were 243 happy and optimistic newly elected Labour MPs filling the palace. The Paris Olympics were just kicking off. London was full of Swifties for the Eras tour. And my constituents were taking the difficult decision that their struggles with managing their health was all just too much to manage to hold down a job, and started the process of requesting support from DWP. That is an illustration of how long they've been waiting. And these extended waits are absolutely debilitating. The not knowing is incredibly difficult. And people do worry, and I think we all experience this as MPs. I mean, these people worry to the point of absolute obsessive hyperfixation that their existing benefits will be taken away. And this is added to by the stigma people feel for not being able to support yourself or your children, of relying on the food bank, of not being able to meet your basic needs for energy or clothes, an anxiety of being judged by those around you. And as the Honourable Member for Strangford mentioned his caseworkers, I spoke with my caseworkers in the run-up to this debate, and I really want to take a moment to appreciate our caseworkers, because I think we need to remember they are not trained as benefit advisors, counsellors or welfare specialists, but they are the ones day in, day out picking up the phones, trying to unpick what has gone wrong and providing backup to our constituents who find themselves in crisis and nowhere else to go. And that is true for all MPs' offices.
With the right honourable member give way.
I'm happy to give way to my honourable friend.
Thank you. And as a former caseworker myself, I can only reflect on how it can impact on you as an individual. To be honest, I used to find playing ABBA after particularly traumatic events on the phone with constituents for my former MP who I used to work for. But the real point I want to make to my colleague is what we need to see is culture change and making sure there is a trauma-informed approach from those who undertake this service to the public, whether it is Capita or other providers. Have you seen such a culture change within these organisations? And I would hope the Minister might be able to reflect on that in his remarks later. Thank you.
Which of course is me. No problem. Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Mr Western, and thank you to my honourable friend. I think culture does seem to be part of the problem in these circumstances. My own view is that my caseworkers work incredibly hard, but often if systems, processes and institutions worked as the way they were supposed to, we wouldn't have the casework coming to us in the first instance. One of my caseworkers told me that on the phone someone can go to being completely fine and talking about their application, their health treatment, and then next to no morning can be in floods of tears and talking about and expressing suicidal thoughts. The DWP isn't responsible for the underlying factors and histories of my constituents, let me make that clear, but the DWP is here to provide a safety net. And right now, by leaving them in limbo, everything is being made much worse. Mental health is worse, trauma responses are triggered, physical health is also worse. One of my constituents has been advised that there is no point pushing on with investigations and treatment for her pain whilst there are so many anxiety-inducing factors ongoing. So recovery is being impacted by this too. And of course, being unable to work without the additional health element of universal credit can make making ends meet incredibly difficult. And poverty and ill health, as we all know, is a terrible cycle. Now, I know the constituents I'm working with are trying their best, and I'm grateful to the local agencies who are offering support. And I'd particularly like to highlight the work of Fife Women's Aid and Square Start. The former offers invaluable trauma support and counselling, whereas the latter can help with all sorts of essential life skills. And I know how many of my constituents have particularly benefited from the budgeting and help with managing their finances. But the reality is we're all stuck in a holding pattern until the assessments are carried out and decisions are made. And we know that my constituents are not alone because they're in that cohort of 35,000 others. Now, the Minister mentioned the steps the Government is taking to reduce the backlog in his letter to me last month. And he'll be unsurprised, I think, to know that I have some questions that I hope he will be able to address today. Firstly, can he explain the basis of why his department has chosen to prioritise new work capability assessments over applicants who have notified the DWP about a change in condition? Now, I'm not saying that existing claimants should be prioritised, but a different first come, first served or some kind of different way of prioritisation might seem fairer. And can he explain how the backlog has got so big? And if it stemmed back to before the 2024 election, why is it taking so long to start to tackle it? And on what grounds is his department used for considering expediting reassessment? My caseworkers coincidentally went to an information session run by Maximus yesterday, and they, with the 50 or so other staffers on the call, were told that the DWP does have the power to approve reassessments being processed if they think there are reasonable grounds for doing so. And I have to say that was news to my team and I, because before now DWP case handlers have consistently said that Maximus is independent and that they have no influence over their operations. However, what we were told yesterday is that Maximus is under instruction from DWP to prioritise all new applications, and that only if they find spare capacity to then look at the backlog of reassessments. If we write to Maximus and make the case for a reassessment being prioritised, they can escalate it to DWP, and that is where the ultimate decision lies. So I'd be very keen to hear more about this from the Minister and confirmation of what we were told yesterday. In terms of making things faster, could the Minister please give more details on what is entailed in rapidly expanding reassessment capacity and accelerating the recruitment of health professionals? I think that goes to the point made by the Honourable Member for Strangford. Given work capability assessments are outsourced to companies like Maximus, what conversations are they having with providers about increasing that capacity? How is that going to be carried out, and how will it be allocated geographically? Now, the DWP already carries out some PIP assessments in-house. Has his department considered adding capacity to work capability assessments within house resource? The Minister said in his letter to me that health professionals are being encouraged to make recommendations based on the papers rather than in person where possible. So my ask to him is, what is he doing to make sure those decisions are being made correctly? I'm aware, for example, at least one of my constituents is stuck on a very long waiting list for PTSD and ADHD diagnosis. There are NHS backlogs everywhere, and regrettably Scotland is no exception in that regard. Leads me on to my next question, which is how the Minister intends to ensure, with this rapid expansion, that decisions are being made right overall. We know that rushing at this stage and getting it wrong will just push the backlog into mandatory reconsideration, which helps nobody. More delays for our constituents and more administration costs for his department. And on a final note, although this wasn't why I put forward this debate, I am aware that the Minister in his remarks might be minded to mention the planned long-term reforms for work capability assessments. And I would like to make a plea now for him to think very carefully about what assessments will be used for Scottish applicants and how those systems will be linked in with DWP. As he knows, we have adult disability payment under Social Security Scotland, and there are already so many problems that need fixing in how these two systems talk to each other. So my caseworkers have to be experienced in both of those systems, or don't, as the case might be. And at the moment, without fixing those foundations and ensuring the right conversations take place between the Scottish Government and the DWP would be unhelpful for everyone. To conclude, Mr Western, 35,000 people waiting sounds like just another number, but it's the size of a medium town in the UK, or just a little bit smaller than the population of Liechtenstein. But there is a significant cost for every person left in limbo, and there's a significant cost to us as a population and to our wider economy. I hope I have demonstrated that today. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered work capability assessment timescales. Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr Western. I'm delighted to be serving under your chairmanship this morning. I congratulate the honourable member on securing this debate. I welcome the opportunity to consider journey times in the work capability assessment, both for initial assessments and for reassessments, and I take the point that it's the latter group that she's particularly interested about. Can I just echo her tribute to MPs' caseworkers, which I think is very well made. It is very important that people claiming health and disability-related benefits have their entitlement assessed as quickly as possible so that they get the support that they need, and I agree with her about that. Let me just set out the government's policy in relation to the work capability assessment. It was introduced in 2008 as the gateway to employment and support allowance, which was the then new benefit to replace incapacity benefit. As it happens, I was the minister responsible at the time, and I remember being told that the WCA had been devised across Alan Johnson's kitchen table in the period when he was Secretary of State. Since 2013, of course, it's also been the gateway to the additional health-related sum in universal credit. Two people with the same condition can be affected by their condition in different ways. So people with the same condition can have different outcome decisions from their WCA. The three possible outcomes for a UCA applicant are fit for work, the individual is not entitled to the additional health element of universal credit. Limited capability for work, LCW, the individual gains access to the work allowance in universal credit, but no increased rate of benefit. And thirdly, limited capability for work and work-related activity, so-called LCWRA, giving access to a higher rate of benefit with no requirement to take part in work-related activity. So the WCA links capacity to work to additional financial support. In our Pathways to Work Green Paper last year, we outlined our plan, and she touched on this, to abolish the WCA and so to end the binary categorisation of people as can work or cannot work. We just don't think that black and white categorisation works now. And one of the problems with it has been that people deemed not capable of work, although still offered help to look for work, have no requirement to take it up, and in practice very, very rarely do. The system has given up on them. We are now changing that, and work coaches with a new specific brief to support people classified as LCWRA say they're getting a very positive response from the people that they are contacting. So in the future, eligibility for additional health-related financial support in universal credit will be assessed in England and Wales via the Personal Independence Payment Assessment, and so be based on the impact of disability on daily living rather than on capacity to work. And she's absolutely right, of course, to make the point, and we are indeed already discussing arrangements with the Scottish Government for how things might work in Scotland. Our ambition is a system that is simple to navigate, which those who use it trust, have a good experience, and generally obtain the right decision first time. Due to its link with the PIP assessment, WCA abolition will not proceed until after the conclusion of the review into PIP that I am currently co-chairing. The co-chairs have recruited a steering group of a dozen people to oversee this co-produced review of PIP. Almost all of the steering group have had lived experience of a disability or long-term health condition. We are going to have a full day together tomorrow, considering how to secure external input to our consideration of how the system should work in the future, and the review's recommendations will be submitted to the Secretary of State in the autumn. So in the meantime, the WCA process, as she's rightly highlighted, needs to be as efficient and as supportive as possible. Now, WCA waiting times, Mr. Weston, can vary depending on individual circumstances, including the complexity of the case, the need for further medical evidence, customers' availability, and assessment capacity. The latest reported median end-to-end journey time for new employment support allowance work capability assessments is 87 working days. Now, that is broadly comparable with what it was before the pandemic. It includes the 4 weeks that people applying for the benefit have to complete and return their WCA 50 questionnaire, as well as time for the providers to request and receive further medical evidence from a GP or another healthcare professional. New benefit applications here are primarily for universal credit rather than ESA. Clearance times for WCAs in universal credit are not yet published, but they will be in phase 6 of the proposed development of universal credit statistics, and there's a big plan for how those are going to be rolled out. Now, as the Honourable Lady has explained, she has a particular interest in claimant-led WCA reassessments, when somebody already in receipt of benefit reports that their condition has worsened, and she said, as she's made representations to me on behalf of constituents about this. I think I've now replied to all the letters she's written to me about that, though one of them was just earlier this week, so we've only just managed that. But the department does, as she said, prioritise initial assessments for new benefit customers. And the reason for that is to make sure that people receive the correct entitlements and employment-related support as early as possible. And I think it is right to prioritise people who've not got any help at all yet for those assessments ahead of those wanting a fresh look at the amount that they are receiving in benefit. And so reassessments are carried out when there is the capacity in the system to do them. Now, the background to the backlog that she's referred to is this, that in late 2024, so after the general election, there was a surge of new benefit claims. And so a need for a lot of new WCAs. Handling that surge led to a backlog of claimant-led reassessments which built up from September 2024 until May 2025. Now, when I was advised that we had a backlog of 35,000 claimant-led reassessments, I told officials to prioritise this group, and I'm pleased that most of that backlog had been cleared by the start of this calendar year. The vast majority of it will have been cleared altogether by the end of this month. So that should mean that the problems that the Honourable Member has quite rightly highlighted will be behind us. Alongside claimant-led reassessments, there are also department-led reassessments, where the department decides that a reassessment is needed to check that the benefit being paid is correct. They're often carried out after a benefit award has been in payment for a specified period, and these department-led reassessments did stop altogether for a period in the pandemic and for some time after the pandemic, while the backlog of new claims left by the pandemic was processed. Now, we said in the Pathways to Work Green Paper last year that we would turn on scheduled WCA reassessments as we build up capacity within our assessment providers. We are prioritising scheduled reassessments for people who are most likely to have had a change in their circumstances. For example, those who have a short-term prognosis for which we can reasonably anticipate a change in their health condition has occurred. For example, those with risks from pregnancy complications or those who've recovered following cancer treatment. We do intend to do this while simultaneously reducing delays and improving timescales for those who are awaiting a reassessment, the group that she's highlighted this morning. This will mean that people who have asked for a review of their capability for work due to worsening health can be seen and receive an outcome as quickly as possible. So to do this, we'll continue to increase assessment capacity significantly through accelerated recruitment of healthcare professionals. Our providers have also expanded appointment availability, including some evening and weekend slots, and they've improved triage processes to identify cases that are suitable for paper-based or remote assessment and so can be dealt with particularly quickly. These steps will continue to help improve the overall experience and ensure timely access to assessments for those who need them. But Mr Weston, of course, ensuring that people are assessed and get the support that they're entitled to as quickly as possible is not everything. And the Honourable Lady has rightly made the point, and she's made this point to me in her most recent letter, that we need to ensure that we avoid cutting corners which could lead to wrong decisions being made. And she's absolutely right on that point. One important factor is whether assessments are carried out face-to-face. Now, before the pandemic, face-to-face assessments were the standard. Those stopped in lockdown, and for obvious reasons, assessments were carried out over the telephone or by video call, mostly over the telephone. And looking back on that, actually, it worked rather better, I think, than people might have anticipated in advance. But it meant that in 2021, only 5% of work capability assessments were carried out face-to-face. Then after the pandemic, there was only a very slow return to face-to-face. In 2024, still only 13%. 13% of work capability assessments were face-to-face. We think it's very important for accuracy and fairness that many more of them should be. So we've committed to increasing that proportion up to 30%. We are making good progress in that direction, and statistics on that are going to be published in due course. The Honourable Member for Torbay raised the question of a trauma-informed approach to assessments, and he's right to do so. Assessment providers adhere to a comprehensive quality and clinical governance assurance framework which aligns with the Department's contractual and professional standards. All healthcare professionals conducting work capability assessments have to be fully qualified, to be appropriately registered, and must complete the necessary specialist training before carrying out any assessments. They also, once they're in the role, have a full programme of continuing professional development to support them. To maintain consistent standards of accuracy, justification and clarity, providers carry out regular audit sampling of their assessment reports, leading to identification of areas for improvement. Alongside that, the Department conducts a programme of independent assessment quality audits, where those identify problems. The Department makes sure that providers put things right through enhanced training or additional coaching or whatever is needed. Providers maintain a collaborative relationship with the Department, taking part in performance reviews to ensure expectations are met and improvements are embedded. Where performance falls below contractual quality thresholds, providers have to act promptly, perhaps with detailed improvement plans, strengthened audit processes, increased supervision or further training. The Department monitors progress closely, and if there is a significant or persistent problem of underperformance, the Department is able to apply contractual remedies to address the problem. Having said all of that, Mr. Weston, of course there are times when things go wrong. I met earlier this week with a member of the House who expressed concern about the outcome of an assessment, in that case for PIP rather than a work capability assessment. Having had the question from the member, I raised that. The officials in the department had a look at what had happened. It was something that had happened in one of the assessment providers, and that provider, when they checked it up, agreed that the assessment had been wrong. Indeed, I think the individual who carried out that assessment has been suspended. So things do sometimes go wrong, and it's absolutely right that members of the House raise these things with me so that we can address them. But one of the main reasons why maintaining quality is so important is that, as my honourable lady has said, some of the people going through the WCA are amongst the most vulnerable people due to the nature or severity of their disability or health condition, or for some other reason. We have in place a range of measures to identify, prioritise and safeguard vulnerable customers from the earliest stage. These include help to complete their WCA 50 questionnaire, encouraging people to have someone with them when attending an assessment, the provision of home visits if that's needed. We know that some people need more support than that. The Honourable Lady raised this with me in a letter last October. We're not planning a triage system for prioritising such cases because we're really focused on getting all the cases cleared as quickly as possible, but the Department has committed to a new safeguarding approach, as my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, outlined in a written ministerial statement in December, and a lot of work is going into that. So, Mr. Weston, I'm most grateful again to the honourable lady for drawing this important matter to the attention of the House, for the contributions of others who've intervened in this debate, and for her long-standing interest in this very important subject.
The question is that this House has considered work capability assessment timescales. As many as are of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is now suspended until 2:30 p.m.